Careful, she whispered at the gala, catching his stare. You're about to ruin both our lives. One fake kiss. One billionaire watching. One message that said nice performance. For a single father and a ruthless CEO, a lie meant to save a company may cost them everything. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, have you ever been forced into a lie to protect your job or family? And where are you watching from? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real emotional stories. Let's begin. Caleb Morgan hated winter galas. Not because of the snow, Chicago looked clean and almost kind when the sun hit the river and the sidewalks glittered like sugar, but because of rooms like this, glass chandeliers, orchestra music, and men who smiled the way sharks did before they bit. He didn't belong here. He belonged in a half-renovated apartment on the south side, where his 7-year-old daughter Lucy left crayons on the kitchen table and taped her drawings to the fridge like they were museum pieces. Tonight, he promised her he'd be home before bedtime. Tonight, he was standing in a ballroom wearing a borrowed suit and pretending he wasn't calculating how many hours of overtime he'd need to cover Lucy's latest pediatric bill. Caleb. Victoria Hale's voice cut through the noise like a blade wrapped in velvet. She moved toward him in a midnight blue gown that looked simple until you got close enough to see the craftsmanship, exactly like her buildings. Hair pinned back. Posture perfect. Eyes sharp. Founder. Owner. The woman who could make a career with a signature, or erase one. Caleb had worked at Hale's studio for 3 years, designing under her direction, learning her standards, surviving her silence. She rarely praised. Never flirted. Always watched. Tonight, she wasn't watching him. She was watching a man across the room. Robert Kincaid. Billionaire investor. The firm's most valuable client. The kind of man who didn't fund projects, he funded legacies. And right now, his gaze kept drifting between Victoria and the empty space beside her, like he expected someone to be standing there. Victoria's jaw tightened. Walk with me, she said, quiet enough that no one else could hear. Caleb followed, feeling every glance that slid over them like a spotlight. They stopped near a tall window where the city lights reflected off snow piled neatly along the street, winter, but bright. The kind of winter that made you believe in fresh starts. Victoria didn't look at the view. She leaned in, voice barely moving. Kincaid doesn't invest in leaders he thinks are unstable. Caleb frowned. Unstable? Her eyes flicked toward the bar. A man stood there in a charcoal suit, watching them with casual interest. Grant Holloway, board member, smiling politely, like he wasn't secretly counting the days until he could replace Victoria with someone easier to control. He's been whispering, Victoria murmured. Grant. About my focus. About whether I'm distracted. About whether this firm needs a calmer face. Caleb's stomach tightened. So what does Kincaid have to do with? Kincaid asked me tonight, she cut in, if I had anyone. Caleb blinked. Anyone. A fiancé. A husband. A reason to believe I won't wake up tomorrow and sell the firm out of spite. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, except it didn't reach her eyes. He thinks stability is romance. That's ridiculous. Yes, Victoria said. And it's also how men like him decide where to put their money. Caleb's first instinct was honesty. Tell Kincaid the truth, let the work speak for itself. That's what his father would have done. But then he pictured Lucy asleep with her stuffed fox under her chin, and the stack of bills on the counter, and the email from his landlord that said final notice in bold letters. If Hale's studio fell apart, Caleb would fall with it. And Lucy would feel it. Victoria's hand tightened around his wrist. For the first time, he felt her pulse, fast, controlled, furious. Kiss me, she whispered. Caleb froze. What? Now, she said, eyes locked on Kincaid, voice turning thin. Before Grant gets another idea. Before Kincaid decides I'm a risk. Caleb's heart hammered. Morality wasn't a clean thing in rooms like this. It was complicated. It was choosing which truth saved the most people and which truth destroyed them. Victoria looked at him then, really looked, and for a split second the armor cracked. "Please," she said. "Just this once. We'll handle the rest later." Caleb swallowed. Later was never guaranteed. He stepped in, slid his hand to the small of her back, and pulled her close. Her breath caught, surprise, not softness. The kiss lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4. Long enough to look real. Long enough for Kincaid to see it. Long enough for Grant's smile to falter like he'd swallowed something sour. When Caleb pulled back, Victoria's eyes were wide, angry at herself, angry at the world, and something else he couldn't name. Across the room, Robert Kincaid lifted his glass toward them in approval. Grant Holloway turned away, already moving, already planning. Victoria exhaled slowly, as if she'd just signed a contract with her own mouth. "You're engaged to me," she said. Caleb stared. "Victoria." "Rules," she cut in, regaining control the way she always did. "No one here can suspect. Grant especially. Kincaid expects a trip to Aspen to finalize the resort site plans. He wants the happy couple present." Her eyes sharpened. "This isn't a date. This is survival." Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He glanced down. A single message. "Nice performance. Don't forget who gets hurt when you lie." His blood went cold. He looked up at Victoria, but she was already walking back into the ballroom, head high, ringless hand lifted like she didn't shake on the inside. Caleb followed, the music too loud, the lights too bright, and the snow outside the window suddenly feeling less like hope, and more like a warning. And for the first time all night, he wasn't thinking about bills. He was thinking about Lucy. Because whoever sent that message knew exactly where to aim. The next morning, Chicago woke under a flawless winter sky. Sunlight bounced off fresh snow, turning the streets into mirrors. Caleb walked Lucy to school, her small hand tucked into his glove, her breath puffing white as she talked about a class project involving cardboard bridges and glitter. "Daddy," she said, serious as only 7-year-olds could be, "if something looks strong but isn't, it can break really fast." Caleb smiled, then paused. "That's very wise," he said. "Who taught you that?" Lucy shrugged. "Life." He watched her disappear through the school doors and stood there longer than necessary, her words pressing against his chest harder than the cold. At the office, the mood had changed. People looked at Caleb differently, too carefully. Whispers stopped when he passed. Someone had already leaked the engagement. A glossy photo from the gala circulated on internal chats, Victoria and Caleb mid-kiss, perfectly framed, snow glowing behind them through the window. Victoria summoned him to her office before noon. "Sit," she said, not unkindly. Her office overlooked the river, frozen in wide silver sheets. She stood instead, arms crossed, gaze fixed outside like the city itself might overhear them. "Ground rules," she said. "We do this cleanly or not at all." Caleb nodded. "I didn't plan to make a habit of lying." She turned then, studying him. "You have a daughter." "Yes." "And debts," she added quietly. Caleb stiffened. "That's not." "It matters," Victoria said, firm but not cruel. "Grant will dig. He already has. Anything that makes you look compromised, desperate, dishonest, he'll use it." Caleb thought of the message from last night. "Nice performance." "Someone's already watching," he said. Victoria's eyes sharpened. "What did they say?" He hesitated, then told her. She didn't interrupt. When he finished, she reached for her phone and typed a single message. "He won't touch Lucy," she said calmly. Not if he values his career. That certainty unsettled him more than fear would have. By evening, the itinerary arrived. Aspen. Private flight. 3 days. Site visit for a luxury winter resort Robert Kincaid wanted finished before the next season. Clear skies. Fresh snow. Press invited. Engaged couple, Victoria said flatly, front and center. The drive to the airport 2 days later was quiet. The mountains appeared like something unreal, white slopes under a blue sky so bright it hurt to look at. Aspen didn't feel cold. It felt expensive. Controlled. Designed to look effortless. The car accident happened 10 miles from the site. Black ice. A careless turn. A sickening slide. The impact was minor, no injuries, but the road closed behind them, and the driver's radio crackled with delays. The resort transport was rerouted. Their phones lost signal between peaks. They were stranded. The cabin was modern, all glass and wood and clean lines, perched above a valley blanketed in untouched snow. Heat worked. Power worked. Silence worked too well. Victoria set her coat down with military precision. We waited out. Caleb unpacked his laptop, then hesitated, pulling something else from his bag. Lucy's drawing. A crooked sketch of the two of them holding hands under a yellow sun labeled Dad plus me equals home. Victoria noticed. You carry that everywhere, she said. She likes knowing I'm thinking of her, he replied. Victoria nodded once. No judgment. No pity. That night, they worked side by side at the long table, blueprints spread between mugs of cooling coffee. Snow drifted past the windows like something slow and peaceful, nothing like the tension humming under the surface. Caleb took a call before bed, voice low. I'll be home soon. Yes, I know you miss me. No, I'm not alone, he stopped himself, glanced at Victoria. I mean, I'll explain later. When he hung up, Victoria didn't ask questions. She simply said, You're a good father. The words landed heavier than praise ever had. The next morning, Kincaid called. Beautiful place, isn't it? The billionaire said cheerfully. Funny thing, I heard rumors about money missing from one of your accounts, Victoria. Your fiancé wouldn't know anything about that, would he? Caleb felt the floor tilt. Victoria met his eyes across the table, her expression unreadable. Grant Holloway had made his move. And this time, the snow outside didn't look clean at all. Victoria didn't answer Kincaid immediately. She stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, watching sunlight spill across the untouched snow outside the cabin like it was mocking them. Caleb sat at the table, hands clenched, his mind already racing through bank statements, overtime deposits, hospital payments, anything Grant could twist. I'm aware of the rumor, Victoria said at last, voice calm, controlled. And I'm also aware of who benefits from spreading it. A pause. Kincaid chuckled on the other end. Careful, Victoria. I don't enjoy internal drama. I enjoy certainty. You'll have it, she replied. By the board meeting tomorrow. She ended the call and turned to Caleb. Grant leaked falsified transfers, she said. Small amounts. Just enough to look like desperation. He's tying them to an account in your name. Caleb stood. That's impossible. I've never. I know, she said, cutting him off, not sharply, but decisively. Which is why he chose you. A good man with financial pressure is the easiest villain to sell. Caleb's jaw tightened. So what now? Victoria didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened her laptop, pulling up internal access logs, audit trails, board permissions. I suspend you, she said finally. The words hit like ice water. You what? Publicly, she clarified. Temporarily. It gives me leverage. It slows Grant down. Caleb laughed once, sharp and humorless. And destroys me in the process. Victoria's hand stilled on the keyboard. I'm asking you to trust me, she said quietly. He stared at her, searching for something, assurance, warmth, the woman who had noticed Lucy's drawings and his quiet habits. All he saw now was the CEO again. The armor back in place. I've spent my whole life being careful, Caleb said. Doing the right thing. And now you want me to stand there while I'm painted as a criminal? I want you to win, Victoria said. And sometimes winning means taking a step back before you step forward. Caleb shook his head. Not like this. The press announcement hit that afternoon. Hale Studio suspends senior architect Caleb Morgan pending investigation. By evening, Caleb's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from coworkers. From his ex-wife. From an unknown number again. Should have stayed in your lane. That night, Caleb didn't sleep. He went through everything. Old emails. Archived invoices. Forgotten permissions. At dawn, he found it, an access timestamp tied to Grant's credentials, masked through a shell authorization only board members could use. Proof. The board meeting was already underway when Caleb arrived in Chicago, suit wrinkled, eyes hollow, determination burning through exhaustion. He didn't wait to be invited. He walked in. Gasps. Murmurs. Grant's smile faltered for the first time. Caleb spoke before anyone could stop him. The engagement was a lie, he said clearly. But the accusation against me is worse. He laid out the evidence. Every file. Every timestamp. Every falsified trail. Silence followed. Then chaos. Grant tried to stand. Security stopped him. Victoria watched it all, her expression unreadable, until their eyes met. In that moment, Caleb saw it, relief. Regret. Pride. The truth was out. But so was the lie. And Caleb knew that even if he won this fight, something between them had cracked, maybe beyond repair. Outside, winter sunlight poured through the glass, bright and unforgiving. Truth always was. The fallout was immediate. By the end of the day, Grant Holloway's badge was deactivated, his office sealed, his name scrubbed from internal communications as if erasing it could undo the damage he'd caused. Lawyers flooded the building. Phones rang without pause. Hale Studio, usually precise and controlled, felt like a glass structure struck by hail. Caleb sat alone in a small conference room, staring at his hands. They were steady now. Too steady. Victoria found him there an hour later. She closed the door behind her, the noise of the firm dulling into a distant hum. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She simply looked at him, really looked at him, like she was seeing the cost of every decision she'd made written across his face. You were brave, she said finally. Caleb let out a quiet breath. I was honest. Took me a while to get there. She flinched, just slightly. You shouldn't have had to, Victoria said. I used you as a shield. You protected the firm, Caleb replied. That's your job. Her voice dropped. And what about protecting people? That question lingered between them like frost. Kincaid called that evening. I'll be blunt, the billionaire said. The scandal doesn't bother me. Talent does. You both delivered something extraordinary in Aspen. A pause. But public trust matters. I need stability. I understand, Victoria said. Good, Kincaid replied. Then you'll accept my terms. The call ended. Victoria turned to Caleb. He's staying. The project goes forward. Caleb nodded. Then my work here is done. She frowned. What do you mean? I resign, Caleb said. Effective immediately. The words landed harder than any accusation had. You don't need to. I do, he said gently. Grant used me because I was vulnerable. Because my life can't afford uncertainty. Lucy can't afford it. He swallowed. And as long as I'm here, people will question your leadership. I won't be that shadow. Victoria's voice tightened. You think I want you gone? Caleb smiled, small and sad. I think you'll survive without me. You always do. He left before she could stop him. Winter stretched on, bright and cold. Caleb took freelance work. Smaller projects. Honest ones. He walked Lucy to school every morning. Cooked dinner every night. Slowly, the noise faded. One afternoon, Lucy looked up from her homework and said, "You're smiling more." Caleb realized she was right. Then the invitation arrived. Hale Mountain Resort, ribbon-cutting ceremony. Victoria's name sat at the top. His was right beside it. Caleb almost didn't go. But Lucy insisted. She wore her favorite coat and held his hand tight as they stood among cameras and winter sunlight, the mountains glowing white and gold behind the stage. Victoria stepped forward, composed as ever. This project, she said, was built on honesty, learned the hard way. And on partnership. She turned toward Caleb. Caleb Morgan is not just an architect, she said. He is my equal. My partner. In work, and in life. Lucy gasped. Caleb's breath caught. Victoria met his eyes, unarmored at last. This time, she said softly, there are no lies. When she kissed him, the cameras flashed, the crowd applauded, and Lucy smiled like she already knew how the story ended. Under a clear winter sky, built on truth at last, Caleb finally believed it too. The applause echoed longer than Caleb expected. Not the polite kind, the kind that rolls, grows, becomes something alive. He stood on the edge of the stage with Lucy's small hand wrapped tightly around his fingers, the winter sun warming his face despite the snow piled along the railings. For the first time in months, he wasn't bracing for what came next. He was standing inside it. Victoria stepped back from the microphone and joined them. Up close, she looked different than she had in the boardroom, still composed, but lighter, as if the weight she'd carried for years had finally shifted. Lucy looked up at her, eyes wide. So, you're not pretending anymore? The crowd laughed softly. Victoria knelt to Lucy's level, ignoring the cameras. No, she said. I tried pretending once. It didn't work very well. Lucy considered this, then nodded. Good. Daddy's bad at pretending too. Caleb laughed, surprised at how easily it came. Later, when the guests drifted toward champagne and speeches, Caleb and Victoria stood apart near the edge of the terrace. Below them, the resort stretched out, clean lines, thoughtful spaces, something built with care rather than ego. I meant what I said, Victoria told him. Equal partners. Caleb studied the mountains. I don't want power. Or titles. I know, she said. That's why I trust you. Silence settled, comfortable this time. You could have ruined me, Caleb said finally. When I admitted the engagement was fake. Victoria nodded. And you could have stayed quiet and protected yourself. You didn't. She met his eyes. That mattered. Below them, Lucy was showing a reporter her drawings, explaining very seriously how buildings needed strong hearts, not just strong walls. Victoria smiled. She's right. Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief. Something deeper. Winter didn't feel cold anymore. Months later, life found its rhythm. Caleb split his time between work and home, designing spaces meant for people who actually lived in them. Victoria learned, slowly, to leave the office before midnight. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes they argued. But there were no scripts anymore. No performances. Just truth. One evening, as snow fell softly outside their window, Lucy taped a new drawing to the fridge. 3 figures. Holding hands. Under a bright yellow sun. At the top, she'd written, "Built to last." Caleb looked at Victoria. She smiled back. And for the first time, nothing about their future felt like a risk. It felt like a promise. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.